Hi, this is Kelly Glick, and this is going to be the case study presentation regarding Dr. Smith and Miss Tate and the online threat. So let's get started with analyzing this case. So first of all, we're going to start out, after reading the case study, what exactly do we know? We know that Dr. Smith is a respected principal. He's been in the community for a while. He knows his community and his teachers. And the school has quite a good reputation as well. We know that the school's in an affluent community, that we have a lot of professional and top earning kinds of parents in this community. We know that Miss Tate is not well liked by students and parents, and that she holds them to a pretty high standard as far as grades. We also know that an anonymous threat has been made against her. And we know that she feels threatened and unsafe just by showing that she's actually not even going to stay in her house the evening that the case study takes place. So next, we're going to look at what we need to know. So first of all, we don't know anything about district protocols or resources. So we don't know if there's already a process in place to examine threats or to try and decide if they are legitimate threats or not. We don't know if there's a counseling service or support center, like an employee assistance program at all, that could provide services to Miss Tate while the threat is being investigated. And we don't know, even though she brought up a student's name, we don't know if there are students involved that have histories of making threats and what that looks like, or this is kind of out of the blue and it's never happened before at the school. So those are some pretty important pieces that I would want to know before proceeding any further. So let's look at, given what we know and what we don't know, what is the problem identification? So in my opinion, the biggest problem is not knowing whether there's a real threat against Miss Tate or not. The wording of the case study talked about wanting Miss Tate to disappear, and that could mean that somebody's threatening to get her fired. It could mean somebody's threatening to kill her. We don't know if it's coming from any kind of source that has the ability to make those things happen or not. And so that, to me, is the biggest problem. We have to find out if people are safe before you can go any further with anything else. So, again, just looking at, safety being first, and the second level of priorities, there's two. One is, I'm making a huge assumption here, but I'm going to guess that there could be potentially some litigious parents in this community because they have the resources to do so. It mentioned in the case study about parents really having huge, really pushing their students pretty hard to attain certain grades and are very competitive in that way. And so the second priority would be trying to protect the school district and from any parents who might not be okay with questioning kids about their involvement in this threat. And also, as a long-term priority, then the teacher-student dynamics in Miss Tate's classroom seem to be escalating. And so that would be kind of the third problem, figuring out what to do with those dynamics in that classroom, given that Dr. Smith has already tried a couple things that were unsuccessful to help her with that. So what is the action plan? Well, if I were the principal, I think that I would do something like this. I think immediately in our districts we have SROs, which are school resource officers employed by the city, but positioned in the schools, and I would first contact our SRO. It's great to contact the district tech director, but we need those two to work together to figure out where the threat originated from. So before we do anything else, I'm thinking about trying to figure out if our school's safe, our teachers safe, and our other students are safe. So after starting that process and looking at where this threat came from, the other thing is if I had that resource, I would contact the district EAP program right away, as long as Miss Tate was okay with that, to ask them to support her at this time. I would also want to consult with an attorney if one was available that's assigned to the school district to just ensure that my process with this was in line with all laws. So I'm not going to necessarily question kids or do anything else before I consult with that attorney. The other thing is I I wouldn't want to, so I would want to, once we have more information, it's possible that I would want to question students, but not until there's a little bit of evidence that exists, like somehow they were part of originating this threat. And it's possible even that with contact with law enforcement that they would take that piece over, and it wouldn't be my job to do that. I'd also want to get parents involved as soon as possible, ensuring that there's due process and that we're following all protocols correctly, and I wouldn't want to investigate kids without allowing their parents to be present. And then I would document everything I do, the reasons I'm making those decisions, the consultations, conversations I've had with other people. I'd want to document all of that. And then the other thing is for those problem identification for like those future goals about dynamics in the classroom, I would start thinking about assigning an older teacher mentor to Miss Tate to work with classroom dynamics for the future. So that would be my action plan. The strategies that are involved in that is, as an administrator, you're required to ensure safety of your staff, and that's where contacting the SRO, district tech director. The other piece I didn't include in the action plan is I would also offer a sub for Ms. Tate for that following day while the investigation was happening. She clearly doesn't feel safe or comfortable, and while I don't want to escalate that concern, I also think that meeting with a counselor and staying out of the classroom for one day might be something I can do as an administrator to both show support and ensure safety. So again, perhaps overreactive, but I would rather be overreactive than under. And so again, another strategy is just protecting the school and staff from litigation by ensuring that parents are involved in any student interviews, or that they're at least notified, that there's lots of documentation, that law enforcement is part of investigating this since it is a threat. And then the other strategy is really building culture. I would not want to be in a school where students are allowed to deal with conflict or things they don't like by making threats against other people or showing disrespect. And so as a way of building culture, taking this very seriously and stopping it ensures all students that they're safe, and also establishes a culture that we will protect staff and students, and threats are unacceptable. So let's look at what is best for students. So when we're talking about promoting the success of all students and also their well-being, I think first and foremost they have to be safe. You can't teach kids when they feel unsafe. I think teaching them how to be respectful to people who might be challenging in their lives. Certainly what would promote success and well-being for everyone is parents who support those school values, and that doesn't guarantee that you have that. I think that's incredibly important. So we're not enabling students, we're helping them work through challenging situations in a respectful manner. A culture where competition for grades isn't so high that we forego personal characteristics that we value. And then also we want qualified teachers with high academic expectations, and that also tends to promote the academic success of all students. So in the case review, just kind of looking at this and why this is best for kids, really again, if you're unsafe, when we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know that kids can't learn when they feel unsafe. And so setting some limits and boundaries, again, around respect is super important. I think a culture of respect and teaching people how to deal with difficult teachers or difficult dynamics, or getting a lower grade than you expected is certainly a way to build skills for post-high school success as well. I think that, again, top quality teachers produce top quality students for the most part. Again, making sure that students understand grades are earned. And certainly giving some consideration for the community and the parents involved in this. It's really important to work in a way that they feel heard and listened to, and that they feel like their kids are being treated fairly, but at the same time not necessarily caving to the belief that whoever screams the loudest or threatens or whatever else is the one whose kids are going to get the highest grades. So thinking about establishing a culture of respect and earning grades and that sort of thing, it may be really an uphill battle depending on the parent community, but at the same time it seems vitally important in teaching the values we want kids to come out of school with. So as I was going through this case study, I was really concerned about the principal's minimization of the threat. He kind of just was like, now, Miss Tate, it's all going to be okay. I'm sure it's okay. Who was upset? And I was also feeling a lot of concern for her because no matter how difficult you are, you don't deserve to be threatened or feel scared at your job. And then my thoughts were, how serious is this threat? Is this something that happens all the time? I hope not. Is the principal so scared of litigation from parents that he doesn't want to take it seriously? And are there things that he could actually do to impact dynamics in the classroom to shift what's going on in there? Maybe things he hasn't tried yet. So my values really in looking at this are first safety and then respect for everyone involved, students and staff, and of course as an administrator I would feel protective over all of those folks. So what's still unresolved, even with the action plan, we don't know the outcome of the threat investigation. We don't know about parent and student reactions once we have some evidence and start looking at what kids are involved and what happens next and what would be the appropriate kind of discipline for that. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of both safety but also some kind of restorative justice model where kids have to kind of restore the damage that they've done so they continue to be part of the community, but also wanting to make sure teachers feel safe and unthreatened and feel like the issue is resolved. So that is the kind of discipline I would look towards as an administrator. We also don't know how the other staff reacted. Were they all super scared when they heard about this because they feel unsafe in their jobs? Or do they feel like, oh, this is just one more kid kind of blowing off steam, happens all the time, we don't need to worry about it? We also don't know still what district resources and policies are available to guide Dr. Smith and to support Ms. Tate. So in looking at the different components that we were talking about, integrity is the first one. And I think the way this action plan kind of reflects integrity is that we're really looking at ensuring safety regardless. There's a lot of feelings probably involved from different parties, but safety still comes first. So staying true to kind of that core value. I think that investigating before accusing anybody is important. I don't know how seriously I would take the name that Ms. Tate threw out without finding out who the originator of the post, the social media post was. Because again, you can get into accusing lots of people, and that can get really, it can get really messy. And then also just forging ahead with the investigation regardless of who's putting pressure on an administrator to do what, kind of puts the greater good ahead of your own against safety before opinions. So when we move on to fairness as the next component, I think that, regardless of Dr. Smith's feelings towards Ms. Tate, if he was able to follow this action plan, he would really be honoring the fact that she feels so scared. Getting her sub for the next day, keeping her up to date with the investigation, getting her support, I think would be really important. And also even the long-term mentor kind of allows her to think about her teaching strategies without making this her fault that she was threatened. I think fairness with students happens by doing a thorough investigation before just starting to accuse anybody of anything. And I think fairness in staff, again, ensuring that there's a safe and respectful culture, that threats are not going to be tolerated, is important in showing fairness to them and just kind of how hard their job is to begin with. And then finally, how the plan shows that there's ethics involved. I think not accusing based on gut feelings, but really having objective evidence shows that. I think ensuring teacher safety is extremely important. I think including parents so that you're transparent and you're trying to follow process and include everyone and hear everyone is also important. So my conclusion is that safety just comes first. And I picked a quote, and this is kind of interesting, from former president of the Union Pacific Railroad, but he said that safety applies with equal force to the individual, the family, the employer, the state, the nation, and to international affairs. Safety in its widest sense concerns the happiness, contentment, and freedom of mankind. Thanks so much.